world growth is going to be strongly dependent on the major Asian economies, because the major Asian economies going forward are going to contribute to the extent of 3/4 of the expansion in the global GDP. The United States and Europe are fast decelerating in terms of the growth, and their dependence for demand in terms of consumption requirement is increasing majorly, and their dependence on the major Asian economies is going to grow in the coming years. So let's see what's the opportunity for India within this. India is on the cusp of tremendous opportunity for both economic progress and improvement in the general well-being of its citizens. India is currently the fifth largest economy and one of the fastest growing large countries, with an annual gross domestic product growth rate of 7.5%, a momentum that is expected to sustain over the next few decades. Domestic consumption, which powers 60% of the GDP today, is expected to grow into a $6 trillion opportunity by 2030. The consumption growth will be supported by a 1.4 billion strong population that is younger than that of any other major economy in the world. Household savings have historically been high, as thrifty and cautious Indian families put away more than a fifth of their incomes for a rainy day. This buffer provides a support to domestic consumption expenditure even through challenging cycles in economic activity. The vision for the future consumption in India is anchored in the growth of the upper middle income and high income segments, which will grow from being 1 in 4 households today to 1 in 2 households by 2030. At the same time, India will also lift nearly 25 million households out of poverty to reduce the share of households below the poverty line to 5%, down from 15% today. Thus, India represents a relatively broad-based pattern of growth and benefit sharing, in contrast to the global scenario of increasing inequalities. India's consumers are also likely to have more disposable income. India's income distribution could flip over the next decade, and consequently, overall consumption in the country could be more than double, from $2 trillion in 2022 to $4.9 trillion by the end of the decade, with the great gains going to non-grocery retail, including apparel and accessories, leisure and recreation, and households and services, among other categories. It's pertinent to note that India's consumption could be more than double as income distribution in the country shifts over the next 1 decade. How that shift is going to take place, let's view it analytically. India's income distribution shift is happening quite positively and quite skewed towards leapfrogging its people to higher earning levels. If you see the current numbers, people earning between 0 to 5,000 rupees are to the tune of 38% in our country, and people in the income group of 5,000 to 10,000 are 36% in our country, and people with earnings anywhere between 10,000 to 35,000 are to the tune of 24%, and people greater than 35,000 are to the tune of only 2% of our country's population. That being so, going forward, given the flip to the Indian economy, given the increased earnings in the Indian economy, and given the overseas remittances increasing steadfastly in the Indian economy, what we can project going forward is by 2030, the income pattern of Indian citizens is going to change quite drastically, and that's going to help improving the consumption substantially. Let's see how is it going to happen. By 2030, in India, the number of people earning below 5,000 is going to reduce substantially, and that number will be to the tune of 13% of its population. But people with earnings between 5,000 and 10,000 are going to be to the extent of 34% of its population. And people with earnings between 10,000 and 35,000 are going to be to the tune of 46%. 40% of its population, and people with greater than 35,000 earnings are going to be to the tune of 7%. So if we see the per month income earning capacity of Indians and the projected numbers by 2030, let me tell you, in India, people with the earning ability of greater than 5,000 are going to be to the tune of almost 87%. With the increased income distribution shift that is happening in the country, the consumption of the Indian public is going to substantially expand, and that's going to be the in market for the overseas multinational corporations. That's where the Indian economy is going to be the most important economy for the world economy for its growth. If India grows, if Indians income distribution shift happens, if Indian consumption grows, the world economy grows, and vice versa. That's why I say India is on the cusp of tremendous opportunity for both economic progress and improvement in general well-being of its citizens. Thank you very much for your patient hearing.